Big Conversations, Little Bar, with your hosts Randy Florence and Patrick Evans, featuring candid conversations with the Coachella Valley's most interesting and influential people. Pull up a bar stool and enjoy Big Conversations, Little Bar.
Welcome to another edition of Big Conversations, Little Bar. I'm Patrick Evans, and I'm here with my co-host, sometimes referred to as sidekick. That's not right, but you know.
Jimmy Olsen.
Randy Florence.
How are you doing, Patrick?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. We get to do this all the time. Nobody has stopped us yet.
We're Big Conversations, Little Bar, and so named because Skip Page hosts us each week here at Little Bar, and I think one of the things that is fun and a little unique about our podcast, if the content isn't terribly interesting sometimes, at least the location is, because this is a great place to come. But today, the content is going to be spectacular because we have a gentleman who has worked for nearly 37 years here in the Valley at the Desert Sun, and he is a household name here.
What's his name?
You invited him. Larry Bohannan is our guest today, and I need to take this opportunity to publicly apologize on the podcast for standing you up at lunch pre-pandemic.
Yes.
We were supposed to meet for lunch.
We were going to have lunch together.
and I didn't put it on my
suddenly
calendar, and then he calls me. He's like, where are you? I'm like, oh, my God, I'm still in bed. Like, it was bad.
I want to tell you what told me that Larry is about the nicest guy I've ever met, because he had a chance to throw me under the bus. A few years ago.
And he didn't take it?
No. A few years ago, I interviewed Larry on another podcast that I had. And there was a golf tournament taking place in the Valley at that point. Yeah. And I referred to it for almost a solid hour as the Anna Inspiration.
Anna Inspiration.
And not once did Larry call me on it, even though I listened to the podcast again this morning, and several times he said ANA Inspiration.
He's trying to help you.
And I never picked up on it.
The reason I didn't was because so many people called it the Anna. They didn't know it used to be the Dinah Shore, and they would come up to me and say, what is this Anna tournament? And if I had $1 for every time somebody had asked me that, I could have retired a couple of years ago.
Well, it's also reminded me that at some point today I want to talk to you about this new LIV golf tour that's
sure.
That's out there.
You and everybody else on the planet wants to talk to me about
the
it.
LIV tour. Anyway, Larry, thank you for being on the show today. We're really excited to have you here. You two have known each other significantly longer than I have.
Yeah, I mean, we work in the ostensibly the same business,
media,
and so my first wife worked at the Desert Sun, and I got to know Larry a little bit because I would spend some time over at the paper for that reason, and but I also have been an avid reader of his for a long time since I moved to the Valley. Now I don't get the paper, but because when the ex-wife left, so did the subscription. That is a whole different story.
You didn't get half of it?
Yeah, but
could I interest you in a subscription? I mean,
that's really why Larry's here today.
We have both print and we have digital available.
Digital indeed.
Yeah.
So as we record this, we're in Masters Week.
Yes.
And I got a few questions around Masters,
sure,
if we can. So first of all, can Tiger win this year?
No. Here's the thing about Tiger. If you just stand him up and have him hit a golf ball, he's fine. You go, wow, that was terrific. Now walk 72 holes over 4 days over a very hilly golf course. Augusta National is far hillier than it appears.
You don't really notice
TV.
it, do you, on TV?
And at some point, he can make the cut, but since he's come back from this automobile accident, and tremendous damage to his right leg, his right ankle.
That was such a significant injury.
Yeah.
I mean, it's remarkable that he can stand up.
That he's even there.
Yeah.
But the pattern has been he plays well on Thursday, he plays decently on Friday, and then on Saturday and Sunday he disappears because he starts to limp, and it's just really hard. Also, he's not playing that much golf. Right. He has played exactly one PGA tournament this year, and that was at the LA Open, or what used to be the LA Open, now the Genesis Invitational, hosted by Tiger Woods. And that's just not enough time and not enough repetitions to to be ready to play golf at the highest level and win. You can make the cut maybe. You can show up and not embarrass yourself, but you're not going to win.
Who's your favorite?
I've said this for like 10 years in a row, and I've been wrong 10 years in a row, but I think one of these days Rory McIlroy is going to win that golf tournament. He's playing very well right now. He and Jon Rahm are the best two players in the world, and Scottie Scheffler is right there with them.
Yeah.
Scheffler won last year. People don't win the Masters 2 years in a row. The last guy to do that was Tiger Woods in 2001, 2002. So that's more than 20 years ago. I just think that one of these days, plus I think with all this stuff with the LIV Golf Tour, Rory has taken a real leadership stand with the PGA Tour and talked about what's right and wrong with the tour and why these people who went to the LIV Tour were wrong and everything like that. And I think it would be a very popular victory among PGA Tour players and fans for Rory to win that golf tournament and complete the career Grand Slam. He would then
that would be huge.
He will have won all 4 of the majors.
How old is McIlroy now?
I think he's 34.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's still certainly...
He would be in the prime of his career if he hadn't been so good so early.
Right, yeah. I mean, he was a kid with a youngster.
You know.
Would it really mean anything if one of the LIV golfers won the Masters? I mean, there's a lot of conversation about it, but would it actually mean something to the game of golf?
I think it would mean something to the PGA Tour. You know, the PGA Tour, if you watch PGA Tour golf this year on TV, there's a lot of promos. The best players are here. Best players play here.
Right.
Well, what if they don't play there?
Right. What if one of the best plays on the LIV Tour?
Yeah, you know, I think the LIV Tour guys have the same problem that Tiger has. They haven't played that much golf. They've only had 3 events on their tour this year.
Yeah.
One in Mexico, one in Arizona, and then just last week in Orlando.
What in the field? What's the crossover?
There's 18 players on the LIV Tour, and there's 89 players, I think, in the Masters. 88, I think, maybe, because Aaron Wise withdrew.
And all of the 18 on the LIV Tour are playing in the Masters?
No, there's 48 players on the LIV Tour. But 18 of them have qualified to play in the Masters in some way, shape, or form.
Gotcha.
Phil Mickelson, for instance, has won the Masters 3 times. He's exempt for life there.
Right.
That's right.
Reed, Dustin Johnson, guys like that are exempt at the Masters for life, and the Masters has said, yeah, we will do that. There are other guys who have qualified in other ways, but so there are 18 of them.
So there are 48 players on the LIV Tour.
Each LIV event is 48 players. 54 holes of golf, no cut.
Loud music.
It's
a rave
lots
at
of
a
money.
golf course.
Lots of money.
Oh, yeah.
Brooks Koepka won last week in Orlando. He won $4 million. Compare that to what Jon Rahm won when he played at the American Express this year and won it in January, which was, I think, $1.6 million.
That being said,
I'd be
other
happy
than
with
Brooke,
either number.
Yeah.
I mean,
other than Brooke, I think I only saw one name in the top 7 or 8 that I recognized.
There are a lot of guys on that tour who came from the Asian Tour and who've not been on the PGA Tour at all. There are a lot of players who were young players who never got a chance to get on at the PGA Tour. And there are some guys who were PGA Tour players who just were not that significant. Yeah. A guy I know from Idlewild named Brendan Steele, who in December at the media day for the American Express said, I've never been asked to go there, but if I was, I don't think I'd be interested. And, you know, if those guys are over there, they have to stay over there. They can't think that they can come back and play on the PGA Tour. And 10 weeks later, Brendan was signing with the LIV Tour. And frankly, in 3 events, he's won more money this year than he won on the PGA Tour last year.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it more significant.
It does to the players, but
it does.
Family.
Brendan's a guy. He's got a wife. He's got 2 young kids, and he's won 3 times on the PGA Tour, but he hadn't won on the PGA Tour in like 7 years, and he wasn't going to. He's on the downside of up, as they say. So these guys come in and say, we'll give you X number of dollars. Here's your contract, guaranteed. You can win some money, and it's hard to walk away from that unless you're concerned about the source of the money.
right.
Well, you spend your entire life focused on one thing. You're a little kid. You hit a ball down the fairway. You've never been political. You've never worried about any of that. And now all of a sudden you have an opportunity to take care of generations of your family, and you're being asked to make political considerations on it.
Right.
It's an odd position to put those people in.
Well, I would say, I don't want to delve too deeply into it, but I think it's more than just political. I think there are
There's moral issues, but no doubt about it.
moral implications as well, and you have to kind of be willing, and I'm not saying I wouldn't, but you have to be willing to hold your nose to take that money.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot of money.
And let's talk about this. You brought up a name, Phil.
Mm-hmm.
Who's taken a lot of heat.
Yes.
And maybe, 5-6 years ago, Phil kind of owned this town during the American Express. What's Phil Mickelson to the Coachella Valley now?
I think he still owns a house here, or a place over in La Quinta, but he's banned from the tournament because of his, not banned, he's suspended. He was the host here for a couple of years, 3 years really. Although the third year he did nothing.
Right.
But that was a big deal to have that name attached to our local tournament. That was a
Short of Tiger, there has not been a player in the last 20 years who has been more significant to the PGA Tour than Phil Mickelson. He's a World Golf Hall of Famer. He's won 6 majors. He's won 45 times. I think that's tied for 9th on the all-time list. And he's very popular with people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Most of those are people who don't know him and haven't had to deal with him very much because he can be something else entirely. And it was a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, the tournament of Bob Hope had a new host, and it was Phil Mickelson, and Phil could do this for a long time, even when he was past his competitiveness. And he's gone. It was gone after 3 years. So I thought that hurt the tournament in a way because it hurts your hurts your ability to market off of a very famous person. This tournament has always marketed off of famous people, whether it was Bob Hope, whether it was George Lopez for a couple of years, Bill Clinton for a couple of years, then Phil Mickelson comes in. It's always had that star power because that's what the desert is, man.
Yeah.
It's star power and it's show business and golf and presidents and all of this stuff. And suddenly they found themselves with no Mickelson, and how do we move forward? Well, they moved forward by not replacing him.
right.
And saying, this is how all the other PGA Tour events do this. Let's try it here and see if it works. And I mean, with very few exceptions. I mentioned Tiger in Los Angeles, hosting that tournament. Jack Nicklaus hosts a memorial. Arnold Palmer used to host his before he died in Bay Hill in Orlando. But that's about it.
But the Amex here does something, and I don't know because I've only been to a few golf tournaments outside of here. Mm-hmm. But bringing in the big names for entertainment in the evening on the golf course.
Right.
That's as much of a draw for much of the valley as the golf is.
Just before the pandemic, we remember that, right?
Oh, there was?
They had 2 concerts. One night it was Stevie Nicks, and one night it was Luke Bryan.
I remember trying to get out of there that night.
And they had, by their own estimates, They say it was 20,000 people, but they kind of admit now it was 25. Because there were a lot of people who drove into PGA West to see their friends, parked at their friends' houses, and just walked to the venue on the driving range there at PGA West. So they think they had 25,000 people a night there. And then the pandemic hit, and they had 2 years to try and figure out how to get the traffic in and out of PGA West, which has one road in and one road out. Jefferson, basically. And but even this last year, they had Darius Rutger
and Gwen
Stefani. And I was really concerned about Gwen Stefani because she doesn't seem to be any part of the demographic of that golf tournament.
Yeah, I don't think Blake's a big golfer.
No, he didn't show either. But she did pretty well. They got about 13,000 people, 14,000 people that night.
All right, so you have 13 or 14,000 people watching the concert. What do you have watching the tournament during the day in the gallery?
Probably about 13.
Okay.
Maybe a little less. The tickets were $79, and you get golf and
Inclusive.
the concert.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So what happens is, some people show up early, watch the golf, go home, watch it on TV. Some people show up late, watch the golf, stay for the concert. Some people ignore the golf altogether and just show up for the concert.
Yeah.
And that's okay because they're trying to raise funds for local charities. That's really what the golf tournament is about, is raising, in 64 years, $64 million. And that's pretty good when you consider the first year they only raised $15,000, and they didn't really even do that. They borrowed the money and told people that this would proceed from the tournament, because if they didn't, they probably wouldn't have had a second tournament.
So, but I also think that the securing of Amex as a sponsor,
huge,
was a huge deal, because the sponsorships had been transitory and not as big a name.
Well, Chrysler was a sponsor for a long time, from the 80s into the late 2000s. Yes. And then you may recall the car companies in this country were taking bailout money in 2008 and 2009.
Right.
And it was a bad look. It was
bailout money and sponsor a golf tournament.
It was kind of an insignificant amount of money when you consider it to be advertising and marketing money, but it was such a bad look.
Yeah.
And so Chrysler left, and they did the tournament for a few years on their own, and their reserves were just decimated. And then they got Humana to show up. The commissioner of the PGA Tour at the time, Tim Fincham, put together this coalition, if you will, of Desert Classic Charities, which was the local charitable arm, and Humana, and the PGA Tour, and the Clinton Foundation. Well, there were some people who were not crazy about the Clinton Foundation in this valley, because this valley still remains more conservative than a lot of places. And Bill Clinton's a lot of things, Hillary Clinton's a lot of things, but they are not well loved in some areas of this valley. Let's put it just that way.
But you could argue that Bill Clinton's more conservative than a lot.
Yes, but he's a more... Yes.
We're not getting political.
Well, we're not going to get political.
No.
But they were... And the Clinton Foundation was involved for 5 years. Although 1 year Bill took off because he was campaigning for Hillary for president.
Yeah.
She lost, if I remember correctly.
He should have stayed here.
And then Humana left after 4 years because Obamacare came in. And suddenly Humana wasn't trying to sell insurance to corporations. It was now a marketplace, an individual marketplace thing. And the golf tournament didn't work with that. Their marketing. They also had their president and CEO retire. And the new guy came in. He was a tennis guy. So the golf tournament doesn't necessarily work for him. So they leave, and then Career Builder comes in. And Career Builder never had a clue what to do with this golf tournament.
No.
And so they were here really only for 3 years. And then it was 1 year without anybody. And then American Express comes in. American Express is the ideal sponsor for any golf tournament. First of all, everybody knows American Express.
It's
name recognition is
the
off
brand,
the charts.
Yeah.
It is a billion-dollar global financial company. And for them to be signed up through 28 now, just gives the tournament stability that it hasn't had.
Well, the name carries such gravitas. Mm-hmm. It is so well known. It makes it such a legitimate tournament.
It also,
not that it ever was not, but it really solidifies the base of funding for the tournament and making sure that these people are going to be around.
The tournament's always been significant. It's had its ups and downs, but the guy who won the tournament the very first year was in 1960 was Arnold Palmer. Well, you can't get more significant than Arnold Palmer in 1960, and then he wins it again in 62. And then in 1963, this new guy came along named Nicklaus, and he won it. So in the first 3 years, Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer win 3 of the first 4. Pretty good. And then Bob Hope comes in 1965 and puts his name on it. Even up until this year, when John Rahm wins it. John Rahm was the number 2 player in the world when he won here. So the tournament's always been there. It's not a major...
But the PGA's made some structural changes that at least this year helped get some of the bigger players in here.
Right.
Can you talk about that a little bit, and is it going to happen next year, the designated tournament?
Since American Express has come in, more and more good players have been coming. But this year, the PGA Tour called these designated tournaments, and they're $20 million tournaments. Huge.
And is this in direct
yes.
retaliation?
Or response.
Yeah, the competition. I mean, you look.
You have to compete.
You got to compete. When the little tournament's throwing that kind of money around, it's going to prompt a response.
Yeah. What you do is, this isn't, when I first moved to California, I heard the governor was Pat Brown. Mm-hmm. And what I heard Pat Brown used to do was he would listen to the Republicans, because he was a Democrat, Jerry Brown's father. He would listen to what the Republicans were criticizing him on. Then he'd do that. Then when the election came around, the Republicans didn't have anything to argue about. Well, you did. No, you did do that, didn't you? Oh, yeah. And he did that for a couple of years. I mean, a couple of elections.
Yeah.
Listen to what your opponents are doing and then say, okay, we'll do that now. And steal it. And make it your own.
But they don't. But the PGA doesn't have the deep pockets. I mean, they can't throw the same level of money.
They can't throw the same level of money as the Saudi Arabian Public Trust, which is funding the LIV Tour.
PGA's got very few oil fields.
That being said,
they should work on that.
How long do the Saudis want to throw money at this?
Because this is an investment for them,
and still be criticized. Right. And they're on television in the United States now on the CW network. And the first week they were on CW network, they actually got lower ratings than a show called America's Funniest Animals. So I don't know how long they want to keep doing that.
Lend those shows.
But they have no. I mean, that is the closest thing to an unlimited supply of money that there is. I mean, I think they can shovel money at that for a long time.
Only as long as they choose to.
Unlimited money does not equal unlimited patience.
Right.
Yeah,
right. So, maybe 10 years ago, I had a sense that people were talking about the demise of golf overall.
Oh, sure.
And particularly in the Coachella Valley. Water usage, people were... home developers were looking at things with trails instead of golf courses and stuff like that. It feels like maybe it's turned a corner and it's heading back the other direction towards popularity.
I think we can credit that in large part to your play, Randy. I mean, you've single-handedly brought the game back into Coachella Valley.
It would be inappropriate for me to say that, but I so appreciate that you did.
I mean, people are talking about your golf game.
Let's get off of me for a moment.
I'll tell you what happened. As weird as this sounds, the pandemic happened.
And you had to be outside.
People were going nuts, bouncing off the walls of their houses. And the state, and particularly Riverside County, which was very strict in what it allowed and didn't allow during the pandemic, even shut down golf and golf courses for about 3 weeks. And those may have been the worst 3 weeks of my life.
How often do you play golf?
In season, not often. I play mostly in the summer because I'm too busy.
Right.
And because, frankly, the golf courses are too busy. And I don't want to say, hey, can I get on your course? Because they're trying to make money.
When you have time to play, do you play once a week, twice a week, 3 times? What do you like?
I'll try and play once a week.
Okay.
Yeah. In the summer, I'll play once a week. In the season, I'll play once a month. And it shows. Trust me, it shows. But so finally, there was such an uproar about not being able to play golf because golf was, what the golfers were saying was, we are socially distanced. There's 4 of us on a hole that's 200 yards wide or 200 yards long. How is that not social distancing? And, they could take precautions and put things in the golf carts that separated the 2 players. So finally, the county said, "Okay, go play, get out of here." People were playing anyway. That was the other thing.
Yeah,
I would get a couple of photos a week from people up on the Art Smith Trail in Palm Desert, which winds its way behind Bighorn Golf Country Club. And people were taking pictures of people playing golf on the golf course and sending it to me. And saying, what do these people think? They're above the law? And I said, yes, it's Bighorn. Of course they think they're above the law.
They're Bighorn and they're golfers.
What are you, crazy?
Yes.
Of course. So after about 3 weeks of realizing they couldn't actually stop people inside these private courses from playing golf, they said, okay, go play golf. But they still kept things like tennis and pickleball and stuff like that shut down. So people who had quit the game because it was too expensive or they had aged out of the game started playing golf again. And people who had never played golf started playing golf because it was something to do and be outside. And there was the surge. And suddenly the surge took golf across the country, but certainly here in the desert, to much higher levels of participation than had been true for maybe 15 years.
Well, there was a financial surge in this valley during that time, too. We had more people with money moving in from the coasts, and there was just more money to the people who had it here.
So,
let me
for a couple of years, and we're still in the middle of it, even though it's 3 years later, I've talked to people from the Southern California Golf Association who say that they expect the surge to go on at least 2 more years.
Wow. Right, but how does that impact the way we build housing projects? Because, heretofore, prior to the kind of the lapse in golfers pre-pandemic, we would build a community around a golf course.
Right.
And you would use golf to sell that community.
Right.
Is that still going to be the case going forward, or is that paradigm shifting?
That won't happen again. I tell people this and they get stunned. The last 18-hole golf course built in this valley was in 2008, 15 years ago. And it was at Fantasy Springs Casino in Indio.
Eagle Falls is the last course built?
The last 18-hole regulation golf course built in this valley.
And that's not a housing track.
No, but it is there for the resort, and it's a public golf course, so you and I can go play it.
And it's a darn good golf course.
It's a very fine golf course. It's a designer by the name of Clive Clark.
Yep, Clive, who did one of the Indian Wells Golf Resort
Yeah, he did the the celebrity course. He also did a course at the Hideaway, one of the two courses over there in La Quinta. For a long time here, and this frankly, this goes back to the beginning of golf in the desert. Not necessarily O'Donnell in the 1920s or
Tamarisk.
Indian Palms or a place like that. Yeah. But if you go to 1951, the first 18-hole golf course built in this valley was Thunderbird Country Club in Rancho Mirage. Okay, and Thunderbird was a failed dude ranch. Okay, and they got a guy named Johnny Dawson, who was a very good amateur golfer before the war. Played on Walker Cup teams internationally, and even won the old Bing Crosby tournament when it was still down in Rancho Santa Fe before it moved to Pebble
Carmel.
Beach.
Oh, wow.
And he came in and developed a golf course for him. And Johnny Dawson, they wanted to sell homes. So Johnny Dawson started talking to his friends and say, we're building this place out here. These home lots are $2,000 each. Now, if you and I talk to our friends, it doesn't matter, right? But
I'd have to have friends.
He was a member at Lakeside Country Club in Los Angeles. So his friends at the club were Bob Hope and then Bing Crosby and Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball and all these people. And all these people, some of whom already had homes in the valley, like Bob Hope, said, yeah, we'll go out and buy a place at Thunderbird. And that was really, it was the start of celebrities in the desert, because that goes back to La Quinta Resort and
20s.
People like that. Places like that attracting Hollywood stars. But this was golf.
And as I understand it, it was a place for Gentile golfers.
Thunderbird's biggest problem was that they did not allow Jews. So about a year later, a bunch of people got together and built a golf course. It was not specifically a Jewish club in Tamarisk. But
the Marx Brothers were heavily involved in that.
Oh, the Marx Brothers were there, and Jack Benny and Danny Kaye.
And that's why Sinatra ultimately ended up there.
Yes. But it was never restricted to Jews.
But
so
it was
within 2 years, we had Thunderbird Country Club and Tamarisk Country Club. And, of course, all the celebrities at Thunderbird knew all the celebrities at Tamarisk, and pretty quickly it became kind of cross-pollinated, if you will. But anyway, so Thunderbird was basically an attempt to sell real estate. Still over there. And, 4 years later, it held a Ryder Cup. We had another Ryder Cup in 1959 at El Dorado. All these places were trying to sell homes. All these golf courses got built. Well, this was true through at least the 1990s. And then things slowed down.
Indian Palms.
Well, Indian Palms was originally built in 1946. 9-hole golf course. It was Jackie Cochran and her husband, Floyd Odlum, owned Cochran Ranch there, and they said, well, we're going to build a golf course there. So she had a friend named Helen Detweiler, who had flown bombers with her during World War II, not in combat, but ferried bombers across the ocean when they were built here and took them over there.
Someone's got to fly them over there.
Right. Well, Helen happened to be a really good golfer. And she was, in fact, one of the 13 founding members of the LPGA in 1950. But in 1946, Helen was talking to her friend Jackie, and Jackie said, we're going to build 5 holes out there. And Helen said, you can't build 5 holes. 5 holes is not a golf course.
Minimum of 9.
Right. And Jackie and Floyd said, well, okay, we'll do 9, but we're going to put you in charge of building them. And so Helen Detweiler in 1946 designed the first 9 holes at Indian Palms.
Okay.
So in 1946, we've got a woman designing golf courses in the Coachella Valley. That's not happening anywhere, hardly. And then they made her the head pro. Said, you run the joint. And she stayed there until Thunderbird opened, and then they made her their women teaching professional at Thunderbird, and she's in the LPGA Hall of Fame and all that stuff. But again, that was more about Jackie and Floyd just wanting a place for their friends.
It wasn't built out until
years later. It's 27 holes now.
Yeah. Because when I moved here 20 years ago, that was kind of the newest spot. Yeah. They'd built it out and they were selling homes like crazy.
Right. They had actually, Eisenhower, Dwight Eisenhower, actually used Indian Palms when it was Cochran Ranch as a place to go and write his memoir.
Really?
Yes.
Even though he was a member at El Dorado.
He was a member. It still has a bust of him behind the home he owned on the 11th hole at El Dorado. He first came to the desert in 1954 at the invitation of a friend of his who was a big baker. He owned bakeries in Los Angeles. And said, come on out and play. You got to play, And Eisenhower, for as much grief as some people have given both Obama and Trump for playing golf during their administration, it's estimated Eisenhower played 800 rounds of golf.
He had a home right on the course.
In 8 years. That's a round every third day.
Yeah, that's a lot of golf.
And he was a member at Augusta National. In fact, there was a very famous tree in the 17th fairway that was named the Eisenhower tree. But anyway, Eisenhower came out here in 54, and he played Thunderbird, and he played Tamarisk, and he fell in love with the desert.
Aren't there, I'm trying to recall this correctly, on the Sunnylands course, aren't there the Eisenhower palm trees?
Yeah.
Because he would look out at the golf course and he really felt like there should be palm trees on a California golf, and there were not.
Annenberg specifically built that golf course, or had that golf course built, with no palm trees. He didn't want any palm trees for some reason. And Eisenhower played it and said, what are you, nuts? And
it's California.
And when Dwight Eisenhower tells you, what are you, nuts? So you go out and you plant 2 palm trees.
So even Walter Annenberg, when Dwight Eisenhower tells you, what are you, nuts?
Well, I had the privilege of playing Sunnylands.
Mm-hmm. And remember who you played it with?
You were there.
Hi there.
Yes, I remember that.
Patrick, Larry, Patrick?
Well, so I think it was Mary Perry who was working for Sunnylands at the time. And I might have said, you should have a media tournament on Sunnylands because, they were trying to promote it in its new incarnation. And so they did. I'm not taking credit for that, but I was one of the people who said you should do it.
Take credit.
And so, Larry and myself and a lot of other members of the media got to play that very famous and really kind of sacred 9 holes of golf, and I actually hit a golf ball directly into the Eisenhower palms.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't
aiming
for
them. I was not aiming for them.
It is the most unique golf course in the Coachella Valley.
Really?
Because it's 9 holes, but normally on a 9-hole course, when you played 18 holes, you just play it, and then you play it from a separate set of tees on each hole. Not that golf course. You play the first 9 holes, and then you turn left, and you play down 4 for the 10th hole, and then you play 3 backwards, and then you play back again, and then you play the 4th hole a 3rd time, and then you go around and play the rest of the golf course. It's like, I tell people, it's like a snake swallowing its own tail. It's really a remarkable piece of work.
That's the greatest round of golf I'll ever play, just because of where it was played. And then you go in and they're showing you the golf ball that's got Richard Nixon's name on it that they pulled out of the lake, and so he hit it into the water.
Reagan used to play there
a lot.
He would always come out during the New Year's era time.
That was the biggest and greatest New Year's party. I mean, who wouldn't want to be at that New Year's Eve party?
Yeah. And Nixon played there, and Kennedy played there, and any president who's played golf, and most of them have. Not all of them. Lyndon Johnson didn't play golf. Jimmy Carter didn't have much use for the game. But most presidents somehow, some way, have come around to play golf. And so many of them have played in this desert. Yeah. Eisenhower being probably the biggest name, Gerald Ford being the other big name, because, of course, he retired here and
lived on Thunderbird.
Lived at Thunderbird, had 2 homes right next to each other.
One was for the Secret Service, correct?
No, well, one was a suite of offices, and the Secret Service was based there.
Based there, yeah.
And then right next door, it was the home that he and Betty used as a residence.
And they would come out if you hit the golf ball a little too close, right? They would.
I went over.
Throw it back to you.
I went over and interviewed Mr. Ford for the first book I did, which was 50 Years of Hope, which was a history of the Bob Hope tournament. And I'm sitting there. I drive up, and there's a guy at a gate, and he says, "Yes," and I go, "Yes, I have an appointment with President Ford." And he looked down at me and said, "You do?" And he went back and he checked. He said, "Yeah, sure enough." And I drove in, and I'm sitting there in this big, huge, what would be a living room, and there's this big, huge, round shag carpet. And it takes me a couple of minutes to realize this shag carpet has been woven into the image of the seal of the President of the United States. And then his secretary,
Penny.
I was going to say Peggy, but Penny said, "This way." And I walked up, and he meets me at the door. And I said, "Mr. President, it's a pleasure to meet you." And he goes, "I read your stuff all the time." And it's like, man, what am I doing here? You know, and he was a very nice but older gentleman. And
he was
didn't suffer fools gladly at the time.
I met him once very early on, and he was extremely charming.
Yes,
but certainly had an edge.
Yes.
Can you believe that the direction of your life took you to the point where you were using the words, "I have an appointment with President Ford"?
I got well, the other weird thing in my life, among the about a billion, is when the Clinton Foundation lopped on to the tournament here. We were trying like the devil to get an interview with Bill Clinton. Our political writers and this and that. Everybody's trying to get an interview with Clinton. I'm sitting at my desk one day, back when we used to have desks in offices, and
when you had an office,
and the phone rings, and it's this guy, and he says, "Hi, my name's Craig. We understand you're the golf writer there." I said, "Yes." He said, "So you're aware that President Clinton is coming to be?" Yes, we're all aware of this. We're hyper aware of this. He says,
"We didn't want to talk to you."
Well, we wanted to know if you'd be interested in an interview with the president. And I picked the phone back up and say, "Yeah, actually, that would be fantastic." He says, "Well, I don't want to talk about politics. I want to talk about the tournament and golf." And I said, "Yeah, when can we do this?" And they said, "A couple of days from now." And I ran in and told the executive editor, I think we have an interview with Clinton." And the guy said, "Great. Who's doing the interview?" And I was very nice about it. They called me. And so for the next 5 years, Bill Clinton and I did an interview. Some of it was in person, most of it was over the phone, but well before the tournament. And it was like, on the other hand, I would also say that, if my mother was dead, she would have rolled over in her grave knowing that I was dealing with Bill Clinton, who she referred to strictly during his presidency as that man. But, you run into that and you go, well, let's see, I've met Bob Hope and I've met Gerald Ford and I've met Bill Clinton. I've met all these not to say nothing of the golfers that I've dealt with. I mean, I always tell people that one of the weirdest moments of my life was sitting in the press tent at the Bob Hope, and Arnold Palmer walked in and looked at me and said, "Hi, Larry." It's like, what? What? You're Arnold Palmer. I'm Larry Bohannan, Cub reporter at the Desert Sun. What are you doing?
So I want to ask you about that. The first time I talked to you, you mentioned that you got into golf because there was an event and somebody needed to cover it early on at the Desert Sun.
Yeah, when I was hired here in 1986, I think they knew they wanted me to be the golf writer. But I was hired as a general assignment reporter. My first assignment at the Desert Sun was College of the Desert football. And
were they a powerhouse back then?
They were very good. They were 9-2 that year.
Wow.
Won a bowl game. John Marmon was their head coach. They had an Irish kicker. I remember that. He was. They didn't have anybody to cover golf. They had people who covered golf, but they didn't have anybody who really played golf, understood golf. I had played golf in high school. I was into golf. They said, "You're the golf writer." And was that okay? And I thought about it for about 3 seconds and went, "Yeah." And so really pretty much ever since then, I've been the golf writer. I still do other stuff. I still do high school football. And
you just came from covering a car crashing into the canal.
A canal.
You're a breaking news guy, too.
Yeah. So, but...
and so you're sitting here today, obviously the peak of his career at this point. I'm sure there's still stuff in the future.
Absolutely.
I know there are some people who say, if I could only get to sit down with Randy Florence.
From that moment
yes,
to now, you've got to sit back sometimes and just kind of shake your head. Sure. What's the one personality that if you leave this job today, the one personality you'll say, that career gave me the chance to meet this person?
Arnold Palmer.
Arnold Palmer.
Period. End of discussion. Yeah. To have the ability to talk with him and be in his home and do interviews with him and interview him at the restaurant and he was everything that people think he is. He was very thoughtful of people. He was very concerned about his fans and people he was talking to, and would always look you in the eye. And not just me, but if he came in here right now, it would be great. And he came over, he would shake your hand and look you in the eye and say hello. Wow. That's what he was. And
that's who I would have wanted Arnie to be.
And to go beyond that, he won 62 PGA Tour events, 7 majors, one of the most impactful athletes of the 20th century. So to get to know him, now there have been others. I mean, Annika Sorenstam, the best female golfer perhaps of all time. We've gotten to know Jack a little bit. Nicholas, certainly I had a relationship with Phil that doesn't exist anymore because he's just not here anymore. But other guys like John Cook, who lived here forever and ever and ever and won 11 times on the PGA Tour. And is the guy you want living next door to you, and you want you and your family to have weekend barbecues with him and his family. So
he just retired, right?
He just played his last official senior event. He's 65 now. He still works for Golf Channel, but
so I want to ask you something else.
Get to know those guys is unbelievable too. But Arnold is at the top of the list.
Well, I had one opportunity to interview Arnold Palmer at his home, and I agree 100% with what you said. Yeah. I mean, he was a remarkable human being.
I saw him once at the Masters. I'm walking one way, he's walking the other. He looks over and he goes, "Hey, Larry."
Hey, Larry.
No, come on.
What, are you kidding me?
There's nothing better than that.
So, Larry, you did something really important for this valley a few years ago, and you and I talked about this before. We share a little bit of history as members of the Reluctant Brotherhood.
Yes.
How's your health now?
I'm fine. What Randy's referring to is that back in 2019, December 5th, not that I remember, I had surgery for prostate cancer.
And you made the very, very important decision to not keep that private, to share that with the community.
I wrote a column for the Desert Sun about it. I wasn't going to. I was going to keep it a private thing. And then I remembered that I'm a writer and writers write. And again, I was almost compelled, as it turns out. You know, we're weird people, we journalists. We don't want to do anything, and then we end up doing it anyway. I didn't want to write that column.
You didn't want the story about you. That's something that you've always believed.
And so I wrote this column, and I remember the very opening line was when my urologist told me that I had cancer, the first thing I thought was, why wasn't he reacting to the 5.4 earthquake that was running through the room at the moment?
Oh, man.
But, you know, I learned a lot about it, and then when I wrote that column, I could not believe the unbelievable response I got from people. People I'd never met before. People who only knew me as a 1-inch high mugshot in the Desert Sun, or maybe even had to see the mugshot, just saw the byline, and called me with well wishes and prayers and advice. I went through this 10 years ago or 20 years ago. You should go to this hospital. You should go to this doctor. You should do this. You should do that. People just reaching out. And it, first of all, it justified my decision to go ahead and write it. But it was also a way to show that sometimes we write stuff in the newspaper or we're on television doing stories, and you go, is anybody out there?
Yeah.
You know, am I just doing this
in an echo chamber?
Yeah.
Like, where is, but
and then
that obviously resonated with
these people come out of the woodwork, and you go, oh God, and it renews your, not just your faith in people, but it renews your desire to do the job, because there are people out there, and they are reading what you read.
Well, it says something else too, Larry, that not every writer could have said that and gotten the response you got. The way you have ingrained yourself into this community over this years, people felt like they knew you.
Ingrained is a good way of saying you're old.
No, you know, there's something I think very important about that, and you know, 37 years, which you are approaching at the Desert Sun. There is something to be said for longevity in this business that we share, and I think it's very important.
Yeah.
And I think in this valley in particular, people value the voices that they recognize and know and have gotten to enjoy over the years.
I remember when Bruce Fessier retired a couple of years ago. He'd been at the paper for 40 years.
Yeah.
He was our entertainment and society guy.
Well, he didn't retire.
Didn't retire.
No, he left the paper.
He left the paper.
He left the paper.
He kicked us to the curb, and but there was a lot of that too, because again, he'd been here 40 years, and people would read his reviews or his, Bruce was very well known for the obituaries that he would write for people in the desert. And when Bruce left, there were actually celebrities who said, "Who's going to write my obituary?" I mean, legitimately, we're talking about that. There are a couple of people in the television industry around here, John White, Karen Devine, who've been here 30, 25 years. Karen and I went to the same college, not at the same time, but we both went to Cal State Fullerton. And then there's a lot of transient stuff that happens here, where writers are here for a year, or television reporters here for a year and a half, and they're out of here. I can always tell when a reporter's not going to stay very long, because after about 6 months, they look up at me and say, "Why are there no trees on your mountains?" And you go, "They're not going to stay
They're not
here
gonna make
very
it.
long.
Right. They get hot here in the summer.
That's right.
They don't get it."
I think it was really important that you told that story about writing your column about your cancer diagnosis, because we do, I think often those of us who work in the media weigh what we want to share and what we don't want to share. But one of the things that you're in people's homes every day. They read your column, and you're part of their routine. So you become just kind of part of the daily part of life. And so it was important, I think, for you to tell that story because it's something to share about yourself, but it's also something important that people should know.
Well, and if you, as Larry Bohannan, tell men to go out and get their PSA checked,
right,
they're going to go out and get their PSA checked.
Right.
I hope some people did that. I know a couple of people who said that, and if it's one or two people, it's enough.
Yeah. Use that as a platform, and you have a platform, so it's good to use.
But I got to tell you, when I first got into this business, platform was not supposed to be part of the job.
No.
In fact, my first journalism class at Cal State Fullerton, the woman stood up and said, rule number one, do not be part of the story.
Right.
Do not be part of the story. Now, the business has changed so much.
Well, God, we're fighting Instagram.
Everybody has changed.
All these, now,
but
so many people are the story.
And it's become about becoming a brand.
Right.
And
influencer.
The biggest brand we ever had at the Desert Sun was Bruce.
He mentioned that to me.
Yes.
Did he say that? He didn't. He might have said it.
Without question. I think it was Bruce Fessier.
There is no doubt.
But somehow, some way through 36 and a half years, covering all those golf tournaments, writing a couple of books, my name has gotten out there, and I appreciate it. Sometimes I'm not terribly comfortable with it. I had an old co-writer at our paper. He used to call me Larry Legend, and I would try and stop him from that because it's like, no. I'm just the golf guy. Yeah. You want to call me golf guy? I'm good with that. The legend part's got to go away, and now I drive to Mission Hills Country Club, and there's a guy at the gate, and he says, "Larry Legend," and it's like,
it's become.
We gotta get rid of that. We really do.
Well, listen,
we're drawing to a close.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have Larry Legend on the episode.
Larry Legend is fantastic. All right, we always talk about music, but before we get to music, your 5 favorite golf courses to play
in the desert?
Yes.
The South Course at Ironwood Country Club. I love that golf course. The Dinosaur Tournament course at Mission Hills Country Club is a great golf course. I hate playing the stadium course at PGA West, but I enjoy playing it at the same time. It's because it reminds me how inadequate I am.
But it's got to be the hardest course in the desert. Close to it.
It's pretty close to it.
What do you think is the hardest? If not stadium.
It's stadium.
Okay.
Supposedly it's not stadium. The hardest golf course supposedly in this valley ever was the original Ironwood. Built in 1976 by Desmond Muirhead and Arnold Palmer, and it got washed out by one of those 100-year floods that come around every 10 years.
That was,
but it was supposedly.
I felt that
it was supposedly the toughest golf course ever built in this valley. I love Eagle Falls. It's near my home. I love the 11th hole. It's a drivable par 4. It's a lot of fun.
Right. Do you drive it?
I've managed to get over there once or twice. And then I like the resort course at Tockwoods Creek, which is kind of on a different level, but a lot of fun to play. So those would be them. All time, clearly, I played the old course at St. Andrews. Wow, that was fun. Played Pebble Beach and Spyglass. Those are great golf courses. Played the stadium course at the TPC Sawgrass, where they played.
How'd you do on 17?
I hit it 3 feet.
Seriously?
I hit it 3 feet, and as the ball left my club, the skies opened up. We'd been dodging rain all day, and I got a bucket hat on. I've got a leather grip on my putter. I'm worried about that. I get up there, and I shanked a putt, and I walked away with a 3. So I just tell people I made par, even though what I really did was shank a birdie putt.
Larry's a pretty good golfer.
Well, I'm sure he is. He must be because he's never invited me.
And there's a golf course in Ireland called Lahinch. that I played and am in love with, and have a picture of it in my living room of me playing the 12th hole.
Ostensibly, this started out as a music topical podcast.
Okay.
It's never been that. But we always like to ask people a song, a band, a group, a lyric that has meaning in your life, something that really kind of touches you. Bruce came with a page of
I'll tell you
material.
I'll tell you this. I love the blues. And by the blues, I mean Muddy Waters, B.B. King, T-Bone Walker.
Honest goodness blues.
Certainly Robert Johnson, Charlie Patton, that kind of blues. B.B. King in particular. But I'm also a classic rock guy. But when I was at Cal State Fullerton in college, I got into new wave and punk and all this stuff. And I just listen to music. And I'm a huge Elton John fan. He has a great song, Where To Now, St. Peter. And there's a lyric, a line in it. It says, Where to now, St. Peter? If it's true, I'm in your hands. I may not be a Christian, but I've done all one man can.
Ooh.
Which is just poetry from Bernie Taupin, his writer. And there's another line from a band called Concrete Blonde, whose lead singer lives up in Joshua Tree, Jeanette Napolitano. And it's called Dance Along the Edge. And there's a line in there that says, and when do we stop searching for what we're searching for? And when it comes, we question love and try for more. And it's like, that speaks amazing.
Took my breath away right there.
All right, so you're a lyrics guy.
I'm a lyrics guy.
You're a lyrics guy. Because some people are in it for the music.
I'm a lyrics guy.
But I appreciate people who are lyrics guys. I think when you listen to it, and that's why I've always been a Sinatra guy.
Yes.
Because Sinatra sang the lyrics.
I called you once. I was going to put a list together of my top 10 all-time perfect songs, and I think I actually messaged you, and you told me Summer Breeze.
Oh, it wasn't
Summer Wind.
Summer Wind.
It wasn't Big Bad Leroy Brown.
But as it turns out, I never put Sinatra on my list because I just decided to keep it to the rock genre that I'm more familiar with. And strangely enough, the first song I put on there was a song called California Dreamin' by the Mamas and the Papas. I think it's just a great pop song.
And it was written in New York, overlooking Central Park on a snowy day. They really were California Dreamin'.
Larry, we're going to have you on again. I mean, by the time we bring you on again, we will have gotten through the Masters. Live Golf will be somewhere.
Will it live on?
A different 48 golfers. But, Larry, this has been amazing. Every time I get the chance to get together with you, I learn something new.
You also, after we stop recording, Randy has a number of questions about the Anna. He wants to know who Anna was, why they named a tournament after her.
And what she has to do with LIV.
What does she have to do with the desert?
Yeah. Larry, thanks for being here.
All right.
Thanks again to my partner, Patrick Evans. Patrick, thanks again.
Randy,
how much fun is this?
Have rapidly become my favorite afternoon, and I'm just saying that for the bourbon, but also the conversation's very nice.
And the company.
That too.
Oh, thank you. And I'd also like to thank the engineer and producer, John McMullen, for helping us out. Thank you for being here for another episode in the center of the Coachella Valley universe, Skip Page's Little Bar.
We've got so many great guests lined up. You'll want to keep tuning back in week after week. Big Conversations, Little Bar. Join us.
Thanks for listening to Big Conversations, Little Bar. Join Randy and Patrick next time as we keep the conversation going right here on Big Conversations, Little Bar.